ask you, before I say too much about the changes that the mayor has made to our changes, the departmental changes after that column, okay? Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
The changes, departmental changes after, as I understand it, is that the departmental changes after all of our interviews, or was that kind of, because you're over there editing the spreadsheet, is that pretty much what we had all agreed on during
That
the
was
discussion phase?
That was after last Monday night's meeting.
Okay.
So we were here a while, and then we talked about, the individual departments going back through. And these columns are just kind of to help see what's what.
Right.
So they're not commingling too much. But PD, cut about 94,000. Public Works, go back over to the summary page. Public Works cut about 46,000. Parks and Rec, 65,000. And it's all noted, and I know that's hard to read on this one that was printed out, but it is.
No, I got it in a pretty good format that I could read. I kind of changed your formatting a little bit and printed it out so that we could read it.
So that's what that column is.
Right.
So the changes by the mayor were basically made prior to us bringing it before you, period. But any changes that have been made by her afterwards, they're also in this column.
So let me just, I'll just cut to the chase on this. So if you go to revenue, and that's one of the big topics that we had at the last meeting, was that the property tax revenue, and these are small numbers, but we don't want to miss them. And then the local taxes, the 289.5 that's been added back by the mayor. I left that meeting feeling like it was pretty clear that we wanted to cut those revenue projections, and you see our changes, reducing to 116, and then property taxes 155, and then the mayor went right back in and added another 100,000 of revenue, and then in local taxes another 289.5, and I guess I have a heartache with that. Anywhere there was a minus, I'm real happy with, but anywhere there was a plus, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For instance, even the marina revenue increased by $56,000. We went through those budgets with a fine-tooth comb, and I actually thought that there were some pretty good projections on all of those departments. But to go back now and increase these is.
And the reason that happened, Jack, is because what y'all were looking at before included projected actuals back in August. So what I did is I went back through the actuals as of 9/30, because we have those now, and plugged in so the 2019 actual numbers, they're different. They're different now than they were on the very first budget y'all received. And there's some notes over to the side, in particular the sales tax. The actual for 9/30 came in 3% higher than the original projection. So that's why Mayor has added back those revenue figures, because the actuals came in higher than what was originally.
3% for the month or 3% for the year?
For the year.
So September was so great that we came in 3% above projections for the year.
Yes.
I don't even know how that's mathematically possible.
We're $800,000 short.
It's all based on the rework actuals, based at 9/30.
And we had these numbers on Friday, October the 4th, because that's when we got these. So by Friday, October the 4th, we had so much information from September that we went from not meeting projections to being 3% over budget. I believe that in the electric department with the heat that we had, the water department with probably everybody watering their yard, but for overall general government,
Well, I'm not saying overall general government, but the sales tax in particular was 3% higher. The beer tax in the police jurisdiction was also 3.5% higher. Only the regular beer tax and the real estate taxes were 1% higher.
So our projection on our local taxes, I'm going back, guys, to the previous budget, 10,586, call it 10,587,000. And the new number has an actual at 10,931,000. So the amount over what was anticipated for September, the amount over what was anticipated was almost 4% of the entire budget for the year.
I thought we left the meeting pretty clear that, 30 million was our number looking at for revenue, just because of the percentage just growing, trending, and then versus the expenses, so that was one way to also cut back on expenses if we feel real conservative on the revenue.
Yeah, I feel like we've been non-conservative, and after I've digested the conversation from the last meeting, there was a lot of talk about fund balances and how we weren't in how we exceeded revenues. Well, we didn't, because these revenues, these approximately 10 revenue categories, there's no category for fund balance, and I'm just comparing apples to apples, and revenue is revenue, and we missed our revenue projection by what we said, like it's $800,000, and I don't know that you can take the fund balance money that was unspent because people didn't get hired in time, or we didn't get capital expenditures made before the end of the fiscal year, and say that we were 300,000 in the black because we didn't spend $1 million. Because eventually you're going to spend it, and eventually the revenue numbers are going to be closer to budget, and when that happens, we're going to be in trouble. So I'm going to keep my remarks pretty short. I've looked at every one of these markups, and I'm going to keep it very simple. I think we should stick to our guns, stick to those revenue projections. Anywhere there's a plus up, I'm not in favor of them, and say, go back to the departments, sharpen their pencils, and if they can't do that, then we come back and say, all right, we need our budget to be this much, and if you can't get it there on your own, we're going to go into proration, and we're going to say that your budget's 95 or 96% of whatever you want it to be, and that's your number. That's the simplest way, but by giving them the option, they can determine what's a priority and what's not. That's about all I have to say, really. Pretty simple.
If you take the adds to the changes by the mayor and the revenue, it's 454,502.
That's this column right here.
Change
The ads.
Yeah, take those ads.
There was some negatives though.
Right.
Tell you what, you're taking the negatives.
Taking negative, just the additional deduct if you take out the ads.
Okay, you just take out the ads.
That would take revised
This is
revenue.
what was emailed to us Friday. So basically, this is the changes that we made. And these were the changes the mayor went back in last week and added these numbers back. deducted some here, maybe some more additions here, some deductions, and then some departments went in, made some cuts. There were actually a few small increases by some departments.
Council, I'll tell you, I had a couple phone calls from citizens asking, about that, why is the garbage operating in the red, the sanitary, how much and how long has it been operating in the red? And they've also been watching these meetings, and they're very concerned. We've had 10 years of strong economic growth, and it's gonna turn eventually. And if we keep going up on these expenses based on, our 5% revenue in 3 years, we're gonna get to a time where we're gonna have to start making serious cuts, personnel wise, and I don't like operating that way.
Well, my concern would be, and I think this has been expressed in several ways, but I want to try to simplify it, is that if there had been a year in the last 3 years where we had spent all the money we planned to spend, we'd been in trouble, right? And that's a concern. I mean, and so, I think we have to plan for that. I mean, it's great when we have rollover money, but that is not free money. That's money that was earmarked for something else at a certain time, and we're rolling that in. But if we, we're sitting there with a bank account full of money, but if everybody comes up at the same time with their hand out and we spend it all, and we don't have enough to cover it, that's on us for allowing that to happen, and so that's a pretty big worry. And so we've been profitable by being inefficient, maybe. I mean, is that, I don't know how to, I don't want to say it in an ugly way, but because we haven't been able to spend all the money we wanted to spend, we've had some left over.
And I also know that we've had many resolutions that come to us throughout the year that say, okay, well, this was a non-budgeted item. Oh, it was budgeted, it was in last year's budget. How many times do we see that? It was last year's budget. So we're spending some of that fund balance on things that didn't get spent the year before. So it also wasn't an expenditure in this year's budget, when revenue or expenditure.
Yeah, and a lot of that can't be helped, and I understand that.
Yeah, no, that's no fault of that.
The ordering of certain vehicles that take a long time to get and process. I mean, and I'm not blaming anybody for that, but my simple point is that, in each of these 3 years, because revenue has fallen short, I think each time, right? Am I fair in saying that? Or at least close to it, that in any of these given years, we had spent all the money we planned to spend, we would have had a shortfall.
If you hit it, from day one, if it all went live day one after passing the budget, then the numbers would look very different.
And I think it's great if these September numbers show that we are actually better off than we think. I'm very grateful for that, and I think that's wonderful to have kind of in your back pocket. And so that if that does come to fruition and we actually have a...
Still 220,000 more than we budgeted.
Yeah.
With the revised.
And so that if it does turn out that we have some extra money, because these revenues continue at if that September is a trend that moves forward and we do recoup more than we thought, then maybe look at some of these things 3-6 months down the road,
That's right.
maybe we can add, because we now see the revenues have picked up in the direction we want them to be.
That's exactly what I think too. I think we can always, there's no shortage of things we need. We can always come back if we have a budget windfall and say we need this or that, but, what I said it last week, and I'll say it again, for your sake, Jay, is that, a couple of years ago, we were looking at paying off all of the scheduled debt payments for the general fund. We were accelerating that to the tune of about $2 million to $2 million a year. So we had scheduled debt payments, we had an accelerated debt payments of $2 million. And then and this is scheduled debt, but it was just an add-on when we bought that Triangle property for 5 years. We had that $1.15 million. So if you go scheduled debt payment I don't remember exactly what it was, Phil, maybe it was 300 or 400, 500,000 a year for the general fund. And then we had accelerated debt payment, add two, so that's 2.5. We had 1.15, so now we're at $3.65 million that we had, that I thought when day one, when we get out of debt, we're gonna have $3.6 million this year to spend, say, on capital projects. And the general fund budget has swelled to where it's eaten almost every bit of that. Now, some of that's in some capital projects, but not all of it. I mean, I really thought we were gonna have a huge windfall. And I know that the mayor has said that we're 100% independent of utilities, but then there's, oh, by the way, there's 1% pilot fee transfer of $1.28 million from utilities to the general fund
I
for.
think it's 8%.
8%. Where did I get 1%? I don't know. It's about $1.28 million, right? It's being transferred
That was
for community
for
development.
19, yeah, but it's 513,000 for 2020.
Right, so, you know, we're still dependent on utility money. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I don't think we should vilify our utilities. It's great that we have utilities to help out our city. I mean, that's what made this city great. We don't have a lot of industry. We don't have a big tax base of big businesses to pull from. We're sales tax, property tax city. That's what we are. We run into a year like 2008, 2009, property values plummet. We're gonna operate in the red. And that's why I think we should cut our revenue projections back to what we thought they should be at. I just think that's the wise thing to do.
Well, and another question, you know, we're really not technically debt-free in the general fund, because these leases, at least the ones that are leased to own, that's just.
It's technically debt.
It's
It is
debt.
technically debt.
So I don't know if that changes, we would have to, I guess, address that ordinance a little differently.
We will have to address that ordinance. If we're gonna, I'll be honest with you, Jimmy, I don't know that we ever really counted those leases as debt when that ordinance was written. I don't think that we were really thinking of leases. And we were moving away from leases and we were buying everything outright. There was something else that we were able to do as we were hammered, because remember, our scheduled debt had been reduced to maybe in the general fund $400,000 or $500,000. 6-7 years ago, we had other warrants that we were paying on, so it was a lot more than that. So once as we were paying that debt off, that scheduled debt was being reduced. So it was freeing up money in the budget to buy equipment or hire people. So we were using some of that to grow government as well. But I don't know that we ever really counted those leases as debt service. So you're right, we do have to address that. We're either gonna have to exclude the leases as a debt. We can do that by calling it, you know, general obligation warrants or whatever. We'll come up with something fancy to call it, but if we're gonna call that debt, then we have to change our ordinance definitely to make this budget balance. Or cut expenses if we want to balance the budget.
So what is that magic revenue number that y'all would like to see?
30 million was what we said in the last meeting. It's 30 million.
So we trimmed it down. I thought we got it down to when, I really thought we trimmed it down to, excuse me, maybe only a few $100,000 and, you know, spread out over the whole budget. It wasn't a lot. It was about 1%. So we got it down to maybe $300,000 or $400,000 of where we wanted to be. And now it's, you know, as the mayor proposed over the weekend, it's back up to $30,734,000. So if I was going to simplify the whole discussion, I would say that revenue needs to be back 30 million even. And I believe that's what the council said last week.
So that's about 617. Or, well, what is the bottom line on?
Yeah, 617, Jimmy, but you got to leave a little something in there too.
I'm just saying, if you got revenue by 617, I mean,
It'd be zero, but
500,000 really, about 500,000 would get to about zero, if I'm reading that right.
Well, that's if you leave all else the same, and don't touch expenses.
Joe,
Well, I'm cutting expenses 500, we get it to even.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Go ahead.
where's the mayor had that note saying that she's also included a 1% increase in lodging tax?
Yeah.
That is on, right here. And
Yeah. 87,500 in the city and 87,500 out, so that was $175,000. And that's, I mean, that's throwing in revenue that we haven't even debated adding a 1% onto lodging tax. I mean, I don't know how you put that revenue in the budget when the council has not even taken up raising the lodging tax by 1%. I don't want to debate it right now, but I'm not so sure I'm in favor of that. I'm certainly not in favor of it just to make our numbers work. Well, that was $175,000 increased revenue right there. We raised the lodging tax last year. I remember, Lisa, what year was it? 2013, 2014, we got voted the best city in the state of Alabama to do business in. Remember that? One of the key parameters was our low tax rates. And that attracts business. And, you know, I know that the mayor's argument's not wrong by saying that it's not our citizens paying it, but, you know, you're making 7%, I mean, it what?
The bill's almost got
I
us.
took out all the positives and I got it at 30,086,324. It's right here.
That's on the,
Revenue.
you took out all the positives in
All the mayor's ad.
All the mayor's add backs, and then I went down to this Alabama Trust Fund receipt because it's really restricted to capital improvements, and took that out. And that got us to $30,086,324.
you cut revenues there, that's the revenue?
Yes,
That's your revenue, right?
yes,
Now you gotta work on expenses, so that's the hard part, right?
yes. And now the bottom line is that.
Which is right about where we were last week.
So you should cut it out.
But now there were some proposed changes, did she put all those in? You know, I see departmental changes, public works.
That's what all those are.
Yes, it's in there already.
Well, no, what I'm saying, I see departmental changes of, reduced 46,000, but
That's in that number.
It is in that number, yeah.
But I believe I saw Richard Johnson had offered up a lot more cuts than that. I almost,
Oh, he talked about,
I mean, I want to say it was like on the order of a couple of
he
$100,000.
talked about some stuff in capital projects, but that wouldn't affect the bottom line here.
Okay.
Because we have no transfers out to capital projects anyway, so that's another fund altogether, but he did talk about that.
And the details that show a lot of this too.
I think that's those two, yeah, but that happened prior to, I think he had offered that up prior to this column.
That's right. Yeah, I thought he had too.
Yeah.
It was almost the day after the meeting that he had sent some proposed changes, and I thought I truly thought when I saw that, well, he was eating a lot of that himself.
Right, and
His
so,
department was, and I thought, well, this is gonna be easy. They're gonna come back and a few more departments are gonna jump in and cut a few things and we'll be there. Then I got this and I said, well, I don't see all those cuts and I see revenue projections increased again by, well, some of them, 389 and 56, 200, what was that? 16, 289, 249, 345,000. 445,000. So the mayor just increased her revenue projections to $445,000 to offset the cuts to the revenue that we want to make.
are y'all good with the 30,086, or do you want to cut it even more?
I wouldn't argue with the 086.
Okay.
We find another $24 just to round it off.
Robert, you're as OCD as I am.
So,
Those even numbers.
council, I don't know if are there any changes in particular that you want to make?
I'll say this, that from cutting things out of the budget, it's always easier to, if you have extra money, to go back and buy a piece of equipment or buy something that's not a person. It's a lot harder to cut a person than it is to cut a piece of equipment. And so I would be hesitant to add unnecessary salaries in those numbers. I mean, I use the term unnecessary, that's probably the wrong word to use, because I'm sure whoever is asking for them thinks they're very necessary, but non-essential might be the right word. So that if we don't meet what we need and that something has to be cut, it's a lot easier to say, hey, we can get this piece of equipment next year, but send Johnny packing.
Right.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that a lot of those departments in the general fund, and we're talking general fund here, is that there have been well into the double-digit increases over the last several years, and even if we ask them to, and what I'm hearing is a little bit, maybe you want to give it a little direction, say, and you really don't need to take salaries off the table when you're cutting.
Yeah.
Is that even if they were to say cut some things by, I'll throw a number, 5%, most everybody's budget is still increasing significantly. It's not like they're going to have a budget less than they had last year. It still would result, I wish I could find an example real quick, but I guess so much paper in front of me, I don't know if I can find it in front of everybody. I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree that there are plenty of departments that need extra people. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious from what we've discussed and then from what we've seen, the growth of the city compared to growth of each department. But I would err on the side of caution in that regard.
Here it is. Like, let me give you some examples. The police department, is their budget, actual, we don't know what actual is next year, but actual, say, from 2017 to what's budgeted for 2020. Police department has a 40% increase. 40.
In salaries, or just total?
I'm sorry, salaries, 31% in salaries. Fire department, 11%. Civic Center, 55%. Nick Center, 20%. Parks and Rec, 44%. Fairhope Docks, 229%. That's since 2017. We're not talking about since 1990. So I think we've made up a lot of grounds. If you buy into the theory that every department was short by a massive amount of people, we've gone a long way towards making up, planning 80%, building 39%. That's monumental gains. That's not small gains. That's monumental.
Jack, on the police department, just because I know the other side of it was those resource officers were added and the county turned around and is reimbursing up to
Right.
50,000 per officer.
Right, yeah, so the $300,000 would offset that some, but just if you want to put a number on that.
And to be fair, some of those departments had 5 or 6 people and we added 2. It wasn't like a department of 100 that we added 30. And so it you know, it can, now,
Right.
I think some departments we've added more than others, obviously, but,
Right. That's true, but we'll take planning. I know that growth is very, very rapid. It's gone up 80%. To 200, roughly $250,000. The police department, if you took out the 300,000, would still be $624,000 since 2017. $600,000. So I don't have any specifics, and y'all jump in and talk. I feel like we should say, just very simply, cut the revenue projection. And I want to hear somebody else's opinion instead of just mine and Jay's on giving some direction to the department heads and saying, okay, you need to cut it. You need to all come back to make this number balance, and you might ought to look at salaries.
well, my other question would be, if that's the proposal to get each department to cut, does that include the ones that have already offered significant cuts? I mean, like police has already offered, what, 90, and then public works.
Well, 90 is not a significant cut out of the budget.
It's not, but I would say instead of just cutting them all pro rata immediately, and kick it back to the mayor again, just say, here's how much
Yeah.
you need to cut out of the budget. And I think it's 400,000 to 500,000 in expenses. Let her go cut, because I know in the past, there was a time we made some cuts because we went through and looked at personnel and said, well, you don't need this, you don't need that.
That's what I'm saying.
And then when
That's really never a good idea.
And since I don't want to use proration, I want them to decide and they can do that.
because she makes, there may be a department that she really feels that can get by without anything this year. She may want to cut more in one area or right across the board.
So Jay, the police department's budget last year to this year is up almost $770,000 in 1 year. And they cut 92. It's increased to 770,000. So I'm like, I hate it. I mean, I don't feel comfortable sitting here with a camera in my face or a microphone saying it in public, but $92,000 doesn't seem like much of a cut. General government, that's grown 530,000. Those are double-digit numbers. When our revenue is over the last 2 years has gone up 5.5% total. Maybe a little better than that with the September projections with those.
Be passing another sales tax next year.
I haven't said this in a forum or the mayor or Jill or even Jeff Montgomery, but I do remember that Jeff had lots of expenses in IT. And I'm starting to look at that and go, how much is that necessary? It seems like every couple of years, we've got another thing we're going to implement for the next 10 years that's going to save us $1 million over the next 10 years. And the game seems to change about every 2 or 3 years. About 3 years into this big savings, the game changes. Well, if we go to this system, over the next 10 years, we'll save whatever. But then it's a new widget every 2 years. We never catch up. I'm not even saying what he proposed this year, but I do recall IT having a pretty big project, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
So that's kind of interwoven in each
Well,
department.
it was a total of about 266,000, in the general fund alone, it was about 80,000. So the rest of it,
The rest of the utilities.
Mhm.
Yeah.
so it's
And
not
that- and
huge
that
on
helps the
general,
fund,
but
does it?
no,
Okay. All right, thank you for that
because
reminder.
I did look at that one. and just
How much was the total?
266,000 and about 90 something thousand was just for general, because it was just general admin and PD. And then the remainder went to the utilities.
You think the mayor could come up with another 400 to 500 in expense cuts rather than just having us say pro rata across the board?
Or Joe, do you feel comfortable answering?
I don't think, I don't know if we're gonna see it, but I mean, I don't think if that's what that's what we request, that's what's gotta happen, or we'll come back and probably cut things that we don't need to cut. And then some that we should have cut. We take a stab at it, I can come up with 500,000 pretty easy. Where you staying? I told you it might be a short meeting.
And I think,
You know, I mean, the bottom line in reality is everybody needs to understand the fact that we just can't keep going at the rate we've been going. I mean, I'm saying the same thing everybody's been saying. But you have to cut it somewhere or other, or it's going, or you're going to, the citizens are going to pay through the pocketbooks because of the balance, of a balanced budget. You're going to have to, that joke you made might not be a joke, that expenses keep going.
Well,
And nobody's going to like that.
Well, and like I said, keep in mind that about $3.65 million that I thought we were gonna have additional, and let's just say you spent half of that on hiring, building up the employee base. Let's just say that we were behind by that many. Well, if you just took half of that, $1.8 million to pay a lot of salaries. And so I would have thought we would at least have had $1.8 million for whatever. You know, and Kevin, you know, thinking back to the budget process before, I don't ever remember when we talked about this having to get into the weeds so much. It seemed like we were just arguing over which capital projects we wanted. That's about it. It was 2 or 3% of the budget, and y'all want this or that, and that's kind of what it came down to. And I hate that.
I used the word chipping, we'd just be chipping it, got a product that we need.
And a lot of times our revenue projections were based on the previous year. We just go back to the previous years and roll it over. And then if we had a good year, the next year we'd bump that up. But, said, you know, when we've increased spending by 17.5%, revenue has gone up 5.5% since 2017. It doesn't take much to see exactly where that money went. It went to government.
Jack, Kim handed out these sheets, if you don't mind. What's your name, Mother?
Yeah, Tim, what you got here?
So what I did here was I wanted us to look at the capital improvements, the 5-year plan. So I think projections going out. Stay away from these cameras. So if we start with gas, and I know early in the budget, just for me, the mayor had proposed to take $3 million out of gas, but for these projections, I left the cash in each so you can see. So you can see like as of March 31st in total cash at the gas department, we have 8.6 million. So then when you look at these projections, I took the current budget of.
Tim, let me give him a second page.
You should have one for gas and one
I
for
got, I'm
electric.
looking at gas, I'm trying to find an 8 million number.
Look towards the bottom is going to be your cash. At the bottom of the sheet there.
Oh, I see it now, that 8.677
Yes,
in .1 font down there?
it's in a small font. I did put it on
I
legal
need an
today.
electron microscope to read that.
And then if you look at the projections for 20, I took the current budget that was presented, so I took the current budget. And so you can see where I added, some cash, what I call, these are cash issues, where you have your lease payments, reserved for capital projects or purchases, then you have your system upgrades, and so you can see where I took that 5-year plan of system upgrades to start out at 1,145,000. And, so I carried that across there. Then for non-cash, I added back the bad debt and depreciation, so you can see that I added that back to show you in year 1 or year 2020, once we pay for the first year of improvements, it leaves us $31,000. Then you can go in year 2, which we're spending a little bit more on those improvements. We're in the hole, $196,000. But you can see by year 5, we're cash flowing. So gas department, to be able to do their 5-year plan, we're cash flowing them without going into the reserves.
Let me see that again, Kim. So we have about 8.7 million, and then you're showing roughly 2.2 million profit here, so we're about 10.8, and how do we get down to 31,000?
So here, these are covering administrative to general fund. There's the 852.
Oh, we need to transfer to the general fund for the utility stuff.
And that's to cover administrative cost. And then you have a collection cost for the revenue department, 59,000. And then here it is, the transfer to general fund for community development. And then here's the warrant. These are what's currently on the books. These are cash that's paying our debt, which is going to be 37,000. That's on that schedule. And then we've got reserve for capital purchases.
So you're still not touching this thing?
I'm not.
No, this is just strictly this minus this.
Yes, so I'm taking, what I consider other uses.
Yeah.
So those expenses, and then we pay for those capital improvements for the first year.
Yeah.
Non-cash is the depreciation added back, so we will not go into any type of reserves year 1. Year 2, it's 96,000, and then we're cash flow.
So that 8 million will be up in
Yeah.
the 10 million range
Yes, I mean, so
by the
we're.
end of 5 years, even with all
And
of
that's
it.
as long as we're not growing labor,
Right.
keeping everything constant. So on my assumptions, I'm looking at growing revenue 2%, but then when you look at the cost of energy increase by 2%, and I've got labor and benefits 4%. So I try to be conservative of.
And you also, you kept your revenue very conservative. Projecting all the way out to 2024, you didn't even go up 10% total.
No.
Which is good.
It's just trying to be very conservative, and the iffy part is cost of operations, and labor.
And we've got plenty of money in there, but would you say, in my mind, I would think we would want the reserve fund target. And it doesn't really matter because we have so much more than the target. I just think we would want the percentage higher than
Well, I've got
20%.
it,
That's not even
so I have
very
it,
much.
so I've at 20%, and that's standard recommendation, industry recommendation, is what I have on there. So you can see, the reserve in the gas fund is very healthy,
Substantially more.
is very healthy.
Okay.
So next we go over to, the electric. Electrics, that's the hard one, which, of course, the electrics over their 5-year plan is double of the cost of what gas is putting in for their infrastructure. So you can see it's the same thing. I took the growth of revenue 2% and, cost of energy 2%, trying to look if one goes up, it should go equally. Labor 4% growth, that's if we don't add, don't add additional staff, just trying to keep everything really flat. So what we have in there is the first year cash is gonna be 4.5. That's, we're gonna go in the hole by completing those projects.
Just, I'm a little slow on reading all this. Do you have those excesses from a levelization rider from AMEA in here budgeted?
No,
I know
that's
that
not
it's
in
wise
there.
probably not to, but in the back of our mind, that can be anywhere
That
from
was-
500,000 to $1 million
I
a year.
believe that was like, it was 700,000, it could be right at 500,000. So that 500,000 is not in there.
It's gonna be huge this year.
So we need to borrow, first year about 2 million.
So I would say that a line of credit, because
Right,
at
30,
the, at
pay
the
off.
end of 5 years, we're short $41,000. So really, I would say we break even, you know, over the year. So that
That's
would be
just
an
all front
option.
loaded.
Yes, it's all front loaded in that first year. It's a big investment in the first year, because that first year is 6.8 million.
That's if you spend that's if you can spend 6.8 million. That's why I always said, it's difficult to do that. But I do like the way you front loaded it. For
Well,
sure.
that's what's in the budget as of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
coming year, and they've already got stuff ordered coming in. So these are things that you've already approved. There's some regulators, and I don't know, all these parts, transformers. So those are green sheets. I know I have done some
That's
this
another
year.
product that's a year away.
No, it's due, short,
Those transformers?
yeah, there's
Weren't they
regular.
explaining to us that the transformers took a year to build?
We got paid for them probably.
And they have that, I don't know if it was on the same
I know
schedule or
this
not.
first quarter, there's regulators that were supposed to be in.
One's already been delivered, another one's on its way.
They have a delivery schedule with them.
So did we receive,
I know they said that.
did we receive that levelization right from AMEA? Because I don't even know that we had asked them to send us the money that we had, the 500 and something
I
thousand.
haven't added that to the budget.
We've got 500 something thousand coming from last year, and then this year, we're gonna get even more. So I mean, and that can all be used for upgrading the system, so that is going to go a long way towards.
And I can revise that, and I'll get with
Yeah.
Mike Allison, because he did send me an email, and I could forward that email to you all, that he sent me about a month ago, when he got some of that information,
Yeah.
and, we can incorporate that. But that's the only thing that I can think of is possibility of line of credit to get you through this first year, and by the time everything went exactly as it is, which you're right, I mean, it may push some of that 600,000 over to the next year. But by the end of the 5-year plan, you know, if we budget really conservative, we could do this plan. I mean, it's gonna be tight, but I think with a line of credit, that's helpful to be able to do it
Will
with a
we
line
get
of credit.
one generically for the Fairhope utilities, or will we have one for each different department that has, they need it, like the electric department's gonna have a line of credit, and then the water and sewer might have to have one?
Well, I think water and sewer is close to being there. I think water and sewer is close. And then gas is fine, gas is fine. So I can go back and look at that water and sewer that we looked at last week, but I was thinking they're gonna be close, but we could still get one line of credit, and I can divvy it up.
I need just departmentalize it.
Can't you,
Yes,
with that excess from the gas and, we already talked about doing that $3 million transfer, would that offset, how we get that line of credit if gas has that much reserve? Transfer to electric.
you possibly you could. I mean, I didn't wanna put it in this first go around to
Yeah.
show that 3 million.
I kinda think I'd go there first.
And then we could transfer that 3 million, I could show that as a transfer and show y'all what that looks like.
Or just show the transfer what you need, I mean, just to balance it. You don't have to do 3 million, it could be just whatever. you
Well,
need.
the one thing I was looking on the gas is because gas's reserves is much higher than, to try to keep them, is at least one of the gas reserves accounts there is like 1.7, you can go ahead, you can move that. Because if we want to be able to look at, let's look at 20% reserves, and we've got greater than that, then that would be a good opportunity to transfer anything excess of that.
Really good job, Kim. That's kind of what I was hoping would play out of this.
But I'll get with Mike Allison, I will send y'all the email on the electric, he did send me an email explaining these, extra monies that come from electricity.
The electric forecast, of course, it's all, weather related, and you can get a mild summer. You know, this year's been extremely hot. We're having an absolutely huge year, but probably with water as well because of all the irrigation, the drought, and the electrical. I'm gonna give y'all some numbers in a minute, but anyway, the forecast for the next, say, 5 years from AMEA looks very good. Our cost of service continues to go down, and you know, when I think about it, AMEA, it is such an honor to be on that board, and thank y'all for letting me do that. But that Fred Clark is one tight ship, and he is a remarkable businessman. He is super smart. Anyway, costs continue to go down, and then if you look at the big public power purchase of PPA, agreement, public power purchase agreement that we have with Alabama Power, that we're accepting bids now 5 years into the future, and we're also negotiating with them. You know, they have the option of trying to renegotiate the contract now before the end of that 5 years, but when you get beyond 2025, it even looks that much better. So, you know, we got the solar farm that's going to be coming online, a lot of things going on. So we pay our electric rates based on our peaks. And it used to be that peaks always occurred in the winter because when you pay for winter fuel, it costs a lot more than heating, just, you know, because heat is pure energy. It costs a lot more to heat than it does to cool. But, you know, it's so hot here, and efficiencies and HVAC systems are such that now your peaks are always in the summer. And so our peak power consumption, which is where they base our rates for this year, occurred, I think, in like July, and it was, the number was like 708 megawatts was the peak demand. And to tell you how hot September was, you don't ever want to hit that peak, and we do, you know, AMEA, so this city is a part owner in an electric producing plant, a natural gas fired plant in Sylacauga, so we do what's called peak shaving. And so we try to reduce our peak consumption by producing our own power so we don't have to buy as much. And you do it when it's going to be, the demand's going to be the highest. So in September, it got so hot that our peak power consumption reached 705 megawatts. We missed about 3 megawatts what we were seeing in July. That is an absolutely remarkable number. And then October, the first week in October, we had a day where we hit, and they measure this real time, we hit 681 megawatts. So October, we had a 681 megawatt period of time. And I forget, they do this averaging over 30 minutes or an hour, maybe an hour. And then, so our peak for the year was 708. So we almost equaled in October what we were seeing in July. I'll tell you how hot it's been. Fortunately, the days are a little shorter. That man saved us. He said that one day when we reached the 708, Fairhope Electric is about 5% of the entire load on the system. And Riviera Utilities is considerably more than us. They're the largest consumer. But he said they were watching that meter go up, and it was fixing to get ugly for us because our rates were going to go up considerably. And he said a thunderstorm came up in the afternoon. It covered basically Fairhope and Foley and Riviera and Fairhope Electric's customers, and the temperature dropped enough that we missed that really bad peak. So just, I don't really want to get into the budget, but I take the time to, while it's fresh on my mind because I talked to Fred today, give you a little inside scoop on AMEA, what's going on there. So what is our desires? And we're not doing it in a resolution form here, but I mean, basically, we need to tell the mayor and staff what we're looking for, and hopefully they're going to come back with that. And if not, we'll have to put it in a resolution form, and hopefully we'll get to that.
I think we give the mayor the opportunity to get back with staff and make the approximately 400,000 in cuts. And then if they don't want to, or don't feel like they can, for whatever reason, then yes, we can.
Right, so the revenue, cut the revenue projections, and then cut the expenditures. Do you want to make any kind of recommendations as to salary? I'm not saying you demand it, but I would say definitely you ought to look at it. I highly encourage you to not make it all out of just purchases, you know. And that's kind of, I don't know how else to say it, that's pretty generic, but if they come back with nothing but capital cuts, you know, council could come back and say, well, you need to cut some salaries, because there's a lot of growth there.
Well, in salaries, a lot of capital purchases or other purchases are one-time things, where salaries are constant.
That's right.
That's the, you limit your ability to grow and make changes in the next year when you spend all your money on
That's
salaries.
exactly right. Anybody have I feel the first place to cut those revenue projections, one of them is that lodging tax. I mean, we haven't even passed that. I don't know how you can count a revenue, which don't even have, we don't even have that.
Well,
I think
I
Jill's
took
already
it
cut
out.
that.
I
You
took
did
it
cut
out.
that out? Okay.
Yeah, I got that number down,
Just really cutting expenses.
yeah.
Okay, so we've got that then.
And I did the $24 for,
She's not another $1,300 off.
And let me say this to Jill and, you know, anybody that works for the city that's looking. I mean, even though we're just kind of whittling this down, we're still talking very small percentages. So, I mean, it was a good job with everything. It's not something we enjoy doing. So, I mean, we don't enjoy cutting.
I don't know, I guess, questions, anybody else?
Anybody else have anything to add?
What about the utilities? I mean, I was fairly comfortable with utility departments.
I think so. Some of them were flat, even some of them were negative growth. And the one thing that we have there, and I've said it for many years, and I'll caution again, is we have that labor cost adjustment factor. If they want to have people that, you know, it kicks in and covers that cost, and we hope that it's a very small percentage. And I've always said that the danger is somebody abusing that and getting more people than they need, and we need to keep an eye on that for abuse. But I haven't seen any abuse of that. The utility side of growth in salaries has been a lot less than general government, maybe with the exception of the gas department, but that kind of comes back to small number of people. You only add a few people and the numbers get real skewed. And I kind of, you know, hammered on them a little bit. I used them as an example. I didn't mean to use them as they need to cut back, but it looks really large. It was 66% growth in a few years in the gas department. And some of that also was related to when you're a small department, medical costs. I'm going to take an extreme example. Let's say you had 5 people and one of those persons was single and 4 people were 4 families, and so you had to insure a lot of families, whereas another department may have 6 people and, you know, they have 5 single people in one family. So when you calculate all the medical costs, they can get real skewed too. So that's just, you can't do anything about that. That just is what it is.
And Jack, I looked at some, Richard Johnson had me to look at, and so we have a department that you may have a husband and wife that works for the city. So you might not see that spouse that's in that department is not necessarily charged on there, it may be in another department. So you have some of those kind of things. So, you know, one thing we looked at in, under the public works was the maintenance and then the fleet maintenance. And so thinking that there should be 6 in each, and there's 3 in one, and that was on the insurance and 6 on another. So that's the reason that kind of looks screwed. So, just so think about those kind of things. Like just because that body is in that department, they may not have insurance.
Anybody else have anything they want to add?
so am I hearing y'all say the utilities look good and y'all are fine with the utilities the way they've been budgeted? Okay.
Only thing I would add, more of a longer term, not specific to this, but we, you know, this list from the mayor of capital project needs that are not budgeted. You know, I think we need to all start thinking and discussing priorities. I know we're buying 113 acres. We're gonna need money to develop a portion of that of the fields. Obviously, we wouldn't do the whole thing at once. I've got, for me, a priority is to move forward with something with the K1 Center. And I think, Performing Arts Center is what.
Jimmy, I put that emphasis on the K1 Center this year. It's gonna take a while to even put a plan together for that
Right.
project before, it's 113.8.
Report back this week, right?
What they said.
Yeah, we should have that environmental site assessment back, yeah.
Structural.
And on Wednesdays, do we have anybody named Wendy? On Wednesday's agenda, there'll be a resolution to allow us to move forward with the closing, and the hiring of the attorney for that. And, I mean, do y'all want to talk briefly? Kim, you want to come up here and let's just talk briefly about, you know, how we're going to pay for that? And there's basically a couple of different options. So one of them is just taking some fund balances and so a little bit of impact fees. But then Kim said, well, you know, we got to use those impact fees. We can't sit on them. So it would simplify things, and you know, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other way you take the money from these funds. But we want to do it the very simplest way. We could take the monies and impact fees for the rec department and add, what's that, the debt prepayment, and that got us to. That pretty much got us there, didn't it? Or how close were we? Was there maybe one more fund we had to draw from?
Impact fees not noted on that.
The impact fees, if you took $1 million of the impact fees, and then if you took the investment in CD, and.
Was that the 1 point?
The 1,065,000.
065, yeah.
And then took that,
It's about 695 or whatever it was.
and then if you took the debt prepayment, that should get you.
So three baskets of money. So if you take $1 million from impact fees, you still have some impact fees left for rec.
Yes,
How much is left?
yes. You haven't, because there's 1.5 million in there.
So you have $500,000 from ball fields.
Yeah, and you've got projects for this year, so there's projects in this current budget of around 600,000. I know that number's gonna change around 600, but then you've got revenue coming in this year for impact fees.
Right. Yeah, that's a certain.
Did I see that as the revenue for impact fees that projected it? Was it? I thought I saw two numbers. I thought I saw one that said 500,000 and one that said 1.5.
Well, the 500,000 is just the transfer from the impact fee into the general fund as to what the impact fee can pay for 2020. But then if you just look at the revenue for the impact fund, then that's where you're getting the 1.50. So 500,000 of that would be transferred over.
Okay, so 1 million net that would stay in that account.
Yes.
A resolution to show the method of payment. Or we just authorize.
Because all these monies were, you know,
Okay.
received prior.
And what's that? So on the 28th, October 28th agenda, there'll be a resolution basically summarizing this conversation as to how we're gonna move that land.
And you'll have, when you start to do improvements to the baseball fields that's behind the stadium, you have the capital improvements fund, that's about 700,000. That,
That's right.
I mean, I found an AG opinion that shows that you could use that money for, and it was an opinion that talked specifically for a ball field, that you could use that money for improvements. So,
Yeah, I don't wanna act like we have a lot of money, but I felt pretty good that we had the money for those projects. And even some left over.
How many ball fields were they talking about adding up there?
Four.
It would be a net of 3 though.
Actually, they take away one.
Yes, they would be eliminating what is currently the Dixie Boyd Field. It used to be the former girls softball field right there at the front entrance. And all that would be turned into permeable parking, which is desperately needed there.
It is.
You know, it is, I mean, my personal opinion, there are safety concerns with the way the parking is set up right now on a heavy game night, when you have soccer and baseball and everything else going on. You've got people parking and kids running around. I mean, it
There
is.
should be a $10,000 fine for the person that pulls and parks in the entrance.
I had to make a hasty exit there a couple of weeks ago. Somebody blocked my wife in, and so I was in the middle of
One way in and out
one
that
child,
park
and the other had to be picked up.
Here's a
Ball
spot,
over.
like, so lucky.
She calls and says,
Just wide enough.
Can't leave.
It's just wide enough for my car.
I'm not totally against it, I'm not sure I'm on board with building a ball fields there.
I can tell you from a recreation perspective, it is the most immediate need we have in any of our rec sports. The fields we have are overused because we're having to practice and play at every opportunity because we have so many teams and so few fields.
Jay, if we were to try to,
My only argument to that is, that space is used for practice space, and I know they need fields. I said the extra night, the process at 13:32. I just think going in there, you have to build additional support.
But that's all part of that's all in the figures that I think Pat presented, was to include
You might as well double that figure.
bathroom, and I am optimistic, Robert.
I'm realistic.
And, it is,
I know it's an immediate need.
well, and I think those, depending on who you talk, some people will tell you that's a 5-year fix, some people tell you it's a 15-year fix.
right,
But, I personally, from what I've seen and having current children in those age groups that need this field today, getting a net 3 fields would give us exactly what we need to handle the load that we currently have. And, that number's only going to increase over the years.
Jay, I think that number included maybe lighting, I'm pretty sure.
It included
So
lighting.
is there, if we had 3 additional fields, is there an opportunity to use those only during daylight hours, and it would relieve the situation enough that you wouldn't need lights for, say, a year?
No. We had that discussion at the rec board meeting the other night, and it's, part of the problem we have right now is we're one of the only recreational leagues that requires our kids to play on Saturdays, because our fields are so full, we can't fit them all.
So I'm saying, if you have a whole Saturday with 3 fields going, would that not offset a lot of night?
They already are full. And that's what I'm saying. And the second part of that is we are losing, travel ball is a very big thing right now. And everybody plays it everywhere. And we are losing, sort of at the end of the year, a lot of our best athletes to travel ball because travel ball's only done on Saturday and Sundays. And they can't play during the season if they play rec because we're the only group that plays on the weekends. And so they have to quit at the end of the season to qualify for these travel ball national tournaments and all this. For the park to sustain what they want to sustain, we've got to be able to get away from playing on these weekend games. And that's
We're not gonna get travel ball and these elite teams start to lock down our fields for night practice.
Well, they don't have the access, because the only way to reserve a field right now is to have somebody involved in the recreational league that's currently ongoing.
Yeah, because I've seen that gobble up
Well,
city-funded
and when we've had
space.
requests of that for soccer, is, these sort of elite
Right.
teams, and we, and it's kind of football is first come, first serve at, different areas, and so baseball, we've got it a little more dialed in. And although, I don't think building the 4 new fields where they are, in a perfect scenario, we'd all be down in the same area, but I think this is the best option for immediate help. And, I personally would like to see us take our time with the property on 13 and 32 and really get a great game plan together on how we envision kind of that entire piece as opposed to rushing over and building some quick fields in the short term to satisfy an immediate need that might not fit into what we see long term. But that's just me.
Yeah, we can have a, you know, we can have a really long discussion about this. We may even have a special meeting or something like that.
I'll be ready for it.
There's a lot of thoughts about what to do.
Yeah, I mean, the rec.
Where to move fields.
Yeah, the rec board voted unanimously the other night to move forward with the purchase, or with the building of these 4 fields.
And they were in favor of the purchase of the land, correct?
That is correct.
Was that unanimous?
They didn't vote on that again, that was voted on in a previous meeting.
Okay. Y'all have anything else?
I know.
All right, we're adjourned.